Today we're here at the LABI 2018 annual meeting. LABI is the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. We're the State Chamber of Commerce and the State Manufacturing Association. We've got about 2,300 business members around the state who are members, representing hundreds of thousands of employees in here in Louisiana. So every year what we try to do is we consider ourselves the guardians of free enterprise. We try to find out what are the things that we need to do from a policy perspective and a political perspective to make sure that employers can invest and grow here in Louisiana. Well, there are a number of issues facing business going into this session. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty because of the fiscal cliff and the government budget challenges. Each year, we kind of find ourselves in the same situation. And unfortunately, each year lately, businesses are targeted either with regulations or taxes to try to solve government's problems. What I'm hearing from employers across the state, big and small, no matter what industry they're in, is quite frankly, they're tired of the uncertainty. They're tired of the changing rules and regulations every single year. They need stability. They want to grow here. They want to invest here, but they need an environment where they can do so. And right now, it changes so much, and a lot of the news that comes out of Baton Rouge and the capital has been bad news for the economy the last couple of years. So we're looking for stability, and if we're looking for sound, stable, competitive policies that allow us to compete with other states.
Tell us about Louisiana's tax structure. What would you like to see happen in this session of the legislature dealing with taxes?
Yeah, the tax structure in Louisiana is confusing and chaotic, quite frankly. We have a tax code that's riddled with exemptions and credits and rebates, and the laws change every couple of years, so it's hard to comply. Imagine if you were a small business and you've got stores in several different parishes. You've got several different tax collectors. You can get several different audits. Each year they want you to change the amount of the sales tax collection, the way you file your personal income tax, the credits that are allowed. If you're a small business owner and you're just trying to hire folks and work that counter and service your customers, you can't do it anymore because you got to go out and sit down with your accountant and your CPA. You know, that's services that you may not be able to afford. The harder we make it for small business to compete and survive, the easier it's going to be for them to, quite frankly, go out of business.
Well, I think the legislature has to get their arms around the fiscal situation in the state. I think it's much deeper than raising some taxes or finding a new tax to put on business or people or anybody else. They've got to dig deeper, and they've got to reorganize how we divvy up the money that we already have. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of programs that might have been good 50 years ago that aren't relevant today, but we're still funding them. And I think there needs to be some priorities set within state government to see how we're spending the money and let the people decide what's important and what's not important. And the things that aren't important, we just can't afford to have anymore.
The budget deficit that we have in the state and how difficult that's going to be to solve simply by raising taxes. I think that when you have a set of cities like Shreveport, like Lafayette, like Houma, that are still losing jobs, still in recessionary mode, laying people off, paying people less, cutting back on salaries, et cetera, it's kind of difficult to go to them and say, well, we've got to keep government at the same level. And I think that's the problem that the legislature is going to be facing here. So I think one of my messages is I think you're going to have some cuts. I think secondly, second message is going to be that we have to be very, very careful about how much we raise taxes by putting it on business, because we have about $85 billion worth of projects out there that are at the front-end engineering design stage. They haven't started up yet. And if we lay a lot of new taxes on them, that's going to move the needle towards Texas instead of us. And it's not like we have a little bit at stake, we have a lot at stake. It's going to be very important.
In this session, I'd like to see the legislature try to adjourn without raising taxes. How do we get through the next couple of months by keeping the taxpayers first and foremost in mind? The fundamental message is, before we come back to ask taxpayers to pay a single dime more, have we done everything we can to tighten our belts and prioritize government spending?
Stabilize the tax climate to create some consistency in how taxes are going to be applied and what the tax rates are going to be. I think even to look outside, for us, one of the issues we deal with are sales tax issues. We'd love to see some consistency in application across the state on sales tax issues. So I think there are a number of things that could improve the environment for our existing businesses, as well as continue to focus on economic development.
I'd like to see, number one, that they don't increase taxes. And I think they need to get the fiscal house in order.
I believe everybody on from the governor's team to the legislature to organizations like LABI are working together to make sure that there's the recognition that to be for jobs, you've got to be for business. And so that's the goal, to understand the contribution that our businesses make to the state, as well as the hundreds of thousands of people that we employ in terms of the contributions they're making to the tax rolls, on down to the community level where our employees are constituents of all our legislators, of the governor. They are the community, they are Louisiana, and all of us working together to assure that we have a vibrant economy is going to sustain our future.
In this legislative session, it would be great to see coalitions built to embrace policies that would first create budgetary discipline for the state, and secondarily kind of focus on conditions that would be pro-economic development and job growth in Louisiana.
The big discussion, of course, is about the whole fiscal cliff and the question of how this state raises and spends the revenues that it collects. And I think more than anything else, I'd like to see what has been referred to for decades as fiscal reform. A proper structuring of our tax system that fosters growth in the economy and fairness to the citizens and the business community. And I think that more than anything else, I'd love to see something like that happen. In addition, I think that there are things that need to be done on the spending side and the way the state does business to create more efficiencies so that those dollars that are being collected are being spent properly.
For ExxonMobil, it's really an exciting time of opportunity. And during this window of opportunity, we want to make sure that we can bring investment to Louisiana. So we would appreciate the legislature ensuring a fair, predictable business environment and a very predictable tax structure. So when we look to invest here, we know the playing field and we can make sure that it's fair across all areas of investment.
I would think the first step would be to where each side of the aisle gets to understand the truth and understand the value of working with one another.
I think one of the key points is that in order to have a fully functional workforce, you have to train the students before they enter the workforce. And a big part of that is a focus, I think, on quality pre-K education, which we're really excited that LABI has added to their education platform.
I would hope that we could address some more tort reform. I think that's one of the biggest problems in the state. You go down the highway and you see trial lawyer billboards all up and down every highway in the state. There's a reason they can afford to buy all the billboards, and that comes at the expense of business.
I have a corporate background. I worked for Shell as an executive for 20 years, and I'm accustomed to managing billions of dollars in budgets and managing hundreds of employees. And so, I understand the role that businesses play, not only in driving the economy and providing jobs, but they do so much in the way of community service. And honestly, we couldn't manage many of the charitable things that we do in the state of Louisiana without a significant contribution from business.
We'd like to see a reduction in corporate tax rates. We'd like to see less regulation on businesses, less government control and intrusion. And obviously, we'd love to see our infrastructure and our education improve to attract more people to Louisiana for a stable business environment.
It really depends very much on where you live. If you live in the oil patch, it's tough. Matter of fact, you live in the oil patch or in the Shreveport area, it's tough. Those areas are still in a state of decline. Shreveport, for example, has been losing jobs since 2008. During the period we call the Great Recession in the United States from 08 to 09, which we thought was a terrible time period, the U.S. economy lost 6% of their jobs. Excuse me, almost lost 16% of their jobs. So they're really tough. So if you're there, the outlook is it's getting a little better because of higher oil prices, but it's kind of tough. If you are in Baton Rouge or Lake Charles, that's where many of these big industrial projects are underway. If you're along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, those areas are doing very well because of these big expansions going on. If you are in the central part of the state, it kind of depends. It's just kind of okay. It's not great, but it's okay.
I want to start by just telling you that I stand before you very optimistic about the state of Louisiana. I will tell you that we have a surge of momentum throughout our state that we haven't had in a while, especially as it relates to the workforce. I'm happy to tell you that unemployment has reached a 10-year low of 4.6%. And I've heard people say, well, that's because people have stopped looking for work. Well, I want to tell you the civilian labor force growth has jumped from 50th in 2016 in Louisiana to 25th in 2017. I will tell you that as it relates to economic development, the state is also doing well. Top 5 state for doing business according to area development. 4th most cooperative and responsive state government as well from area development. Top 10 in Site Selection Magazine's Prosperity Cup. Number 1 southern state with the most project wins per capita according to Southern Business and Development. 7th best cost for doing business according to Business Facilities. 4th best for a small business environment according to thumbtack.com. You all are probably aware we landed the biggest economic development win in the state's history in terms of direct permanent jobs at one site last year with DXC Technologies, 2,000 jobs for the Digital Transformation Center there in New Orleans. New Orleans actually edged out 30 other cities. It's the 2nd best economic development win in the country for 2017. And New Orleans is having their 300th birthday this year, so this just adds to the excitement and gives them another reason to celebrate. Since I took office 2 years ago, Louisiana has attracted 83 major economic development projects with investments over $25.6 billion, 19,745 new direct jobs and indirect jobs, and retention of over 13,000 jobs. I also want to tell you that we're working hard on a number of areas. On Monday, for example, I will be in a meeting at the White House discussing infrastructure at a roundtable meeting with White House officials and a handful of governors so that we can advance transportation infrastructure in Louisiana, which you all know. That's one of the things that we need to do in a big way. And I know you all had a roundtable this morning focusing a lot on transparency. And I will tell you that transparency is something that I embrace. And as it relates to the Louisiana checkbook, there's not an objection for me. I just need to make sure that we can do this in a reasonable fashion based on when state agencies come online and make sure that we have that common framework so that we can put some software on top and actually feed accurate data to it. But there's no problem there that we can't work through. I'd also tell you that I operate my governor's office with more transparency than any governor's office in the history of this state. While I was a legislator, 5 times I voted for bills that would increase transparency. The only one that actually passed and became effective at noon on July the 11th of 2016, which happens to be the exact time that I took the oath of office. So I embrace transparency. I think it's the right thing to do. So I look forward to working with you all and with the Speaker and the legislature on that as we address the fiscal cliff. As you all probably know, the cliff is there because we're going to lose about $1.3 billion in revenue on June 30th. I'm asking that we replace $994 million, which represents the difference between this year's forecasted state general fund and next year's. So not looking for net new revenue, not even trying to be revenue neutral. I will tell you that I have sought input from the business community across the state of Louisiana with more than 30 meetings around the state and talking to businessmen and businesswomen, making sure that I heard their concerns and that we factored in those concerns into what we were trying to do. And what we're trying to do is enact enough reform to fix the problem and reform that comes from the task force that studied these issues so that we can promote fairness, predictability, and stability in Louisiana. And by the way, we ought to simplify our system too. We have one of the most 10 complex tax structures in the country to administer, but we have the 5th lowest tax burden. That doesn't make sense. So we need to simplify as well. So I'm looking forward to continuing working with you all, but also with the legislature. I happen to be optimistic that we're going to resolve the cliff. I think we need to do it in February for a lot of reasons. And I'm optimistic that we're actually going to be able to get that done. I would encourage you all to remain involved. And we can't say no to everything. That doesn't work. It never gets anything fixed. But if you all have ideas that are different than what we propose, I'm happy to hear them and take them into consideration so that together we can resolve this cliff. And when that happens, you're going to see Louisiana enter into an era of prosperity like we haven't seen in a very long time. That's one of the things that I'm so excited about as governor, and I want to thank you for the role that you play in that. And my pledge to you is I will continue to work with you every step of the way, so long as I'm governor, so that we can have the state that we want to have, so that those 2 kids that came up here a while ago and led us in prayer and in pledge have every opportunity for success here in Louisiana. That's my mission. I know that it's your mission, and working together, we're going to get that done. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Those reforms that we included in our correspondence to him with how we calculate our spending cap, our transparency through checkbook, some of the Medicaid efficiencies that we suggested as well, are the kinds of things that we want to make sure we have working, looking to the future and preventing future fiscal cliffs, and that we partner that with any of the revenue enhancement that we talk about.
My goal as your state treasurer is to force government to live within its means, just like you have to do every day. And Stephen's right on. I have a small business. My wife's a contractor. I've been in retail, development, real estate. We have to live within our means. When the economy's down, you have to cut down even more. So I'm convinced that the state needs to learn how to live within its means and curb its own spending habits, just like we do every day. Now, I'm pretty conservative, and it has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat. And I don't ever, when I'm talking finances, I'm not talking politics. But it is a conservative mindset that I bring that I think is important that this state understands and embraces. It just has to happen. If you look at my first slide, do I have a slide person? There it is. You know, when you look at the growth of government is growing at 8%. Our economy's grown at 2%. I was afraid Loren was going to steal my thunder. Whereas your personal income's grown at 1%. Now just take a look at that. That's about as elementary as you can get. Government is growing faster than the economy, faster than your paycheck. So while the federal government's talking about lowering your taxes, the state's talking about raising your taxes. But I just want you to keep that in your mind. We can't possibly allow for an increase in taxes at a time when the economy, businesses, and families continue to struggle. Most of our businesses are wrapped around the residential home construction. My wife sold 1 spec house last year and lost $300. She's got to sell 2.3 units a year just to pay her overhead. So if you ask Ellie what her thought is right now as the debate begins on whether we ought to raise taxes, it's not good. I'll let her send you a little email. You know, state government has a habit of spending every dime it has and every dime it thinks it's going to get. You know, as an entrepreneur, I've done a little bit of everything, and I'm just tired as a business person in a family business who has to do without have to make sacrifices, have to lay people off. We closed our first business, I think, in 2009. You know, that period between 07 and 11 were crucial if you were in a home building business. And it was very difficult. But you know what? I'm tired of having to do that only to watch this happen. I don't mind paying my part. And you know what? I bet you don't mind paying your part. But I'm tired of paying my part and watch this happen. So let's talk a little bit about the budget. I spent my 10 years in the legislature, most of that time on the budget committee. And, you know, when I first got into my first day in office, I got elected on a Saturday. I showed up on Monday, and the very first thing they asked me was, the divisions asked for your budget. I said, gee, I hadn't even been sworn in yet. I said, but this is easy. It's the easiest decision I make. We're just going to have a standstill budget. Now, look, there's a lot of business people in this room. Standstill budget means, in my world, if I spent $1 million last year, I'm going to spend $1 million this year. Would you be surprised if I told you when I got my budget back from the division, it was up 3.8%? That's standstill budget. You know, so the way I see this, if you look at my next slide, you know, I've been fussing about our spending habits for 10 years, now on my 11th year. And the great thing about being treasurer, if I was just a House member on the Appropriations Committee, I probably wouldn't be standing in front of you and speaking to my former friend, not my former friend, but my former speaker. Hello, Mr. Speaker. Good luck, Mr. Speaker. But look at this. So we talk about this cliff, and I was asked this by the media a few minutes ago about the cliff. And the more I look at these numbers, we're in the current fiscal year, we're spending the most money that we've ever have as a state. And the budget as proposed by the administration today is the third highest budget the state's ever seen. So if you give the beast the $900 million that it wants, well, I believe, and I could be off by a couple million or so, would be the highest budget we've ever had in the state of Louisiana. So, I mean, I guess the cliff means different things to different people if you go back and look at the previous slide. The biggest problem we face as your state treasurer, which you're going to hear me talk a lot about, this causes great debt. And I said it earlier. We spend every dime we have. We spend every dime we think we're going to have. And what it really means is our debt just continues to grow. And I get asked, the question I probably get asked more than anything as state treasurer is, what are you going to do to improve our bond rating? Well, it's no different than what I do at home in my business. If I want a better interest rate at my bank, then my finances better be in order. I mean, I better have less red numbers than black numbers. Your problem and our problem as citizens of this state, we have too many red numbers. We got to have more black numbers than red numbers. Now, you can accomplish that in one or two ways in the business world. You either go out, invest money, and you make more with a combination of, or the second choice would be to lower your expenses. Now, I can no longer raise revenue. I'm not in the legislature anymore. But as your treasurer and as your banker, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. Our debt's out of control, and we have to get our spending. In order to fix your debt, you have to get a hold of your spending. Now, there's been a lot of talk about transparency and the Ohio checkbook, and we have a Yankee here to talk about this in a little bit, right? So what would I do at this point? After spending 10 years in the legislature, I would tell you that we need to expose everything, from buying a pencil to buying an automobile. I think the citizens of Louisiana ought to be able to see it. I do truly believe that that my wife, when I spend money and my wife looks at where I spend it and how I spend it, I often think twice sometimes. Like Mardi Gras is my favorite time of year, and she wants to know why I'm riding 2 parades and how much is that going to cost, okay? I haven't figured out how I'm going to pay for it so she doesn't see it. But she knows I'm a big Mardi Gras fan. But my point is, it's amazing what you do when somebody's watching you. So I do believe transparency leads to accountability, and we can change the spending habits of this state. So I strongly, strongly support, and I know we're going to talk a lot about this, I strongly support a transparent system. My office in particular, I think from a debt standpoint, I'd like to have something sooner than later on what the debt is of Louisiana and where's our debt, where's our spending, where's it happening, and what categories and what departments. I think I can do that relatively cheap, but I also believe that it will start, putting the sunshine on some things, and it will affect spending habits. I can promise you this much. Within my own department today, my staff is second guessing things now because I look at every dollar. Every dollar spent in my department is coming across my desk. And not that I distrust anybody, it's sort of human nature. And government, unfortunately, just doesn't spend money the same way you would. And I just want my staff, and I say this often, before you say it, act it, do it, or spend it, you better think about what's the interpretation by the people that we work for, because I'm not their boss. You are their boss. We work for you. So before we do anything, I want them to think twice. What is the public perception before you do it? Because I don't want to find out after the fact. So I very much look forward to working with the legislature and administration, LABI, or any other group who thinks transparency is the way to go. That's not an overnight fix, but I believe that process will help save the state some money and get rid of some of the fat that I believe is there. So thank you. Thanks for the invite, Stephen. And
I want to set the stage a little bit. Usually when you go to a panel or a conference, the first thing the person at the microphone says is, please put your phones away. I want you to take them out. Take your phones out if you don't mind. Keep them in your hand for the next part of this discussion. Don't look too much at it. Don't get distracted. But just please, keep it in your hand. I want you to have your phone with you because I want to just talk real briefly about the evolution of that device sitting in your hand. If you go back to 2004, Facebook started. If you go back to 2006, Twitter started. 2007, Netflix started streaming video to Americans all across the country. 2008, a website called LaTrack was started in Louisiana that for the first time put expenses online at the state level. 2010, Instagram came to be. 2011, Pandora went and got their IPO and got the funding to start streaming music and change the way we listen to music. 2011, Snapchat. Some of you are saying, what's Snapchat? Your kids and your grandkids, they use it a lot more than you realize. So you better go figure out what that is. In 2014, something called checkbook.com started in Ohio. So think about that evolution real quick. 2004, Facebook just came to be. Imagine today, can anyone go on vacation or have a meal at a restaurant without sharing this anymore? I mean, I had a birthday 2 days ago. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Before I knew it, 8,000 people knew it was my birthday because Facebook, you all have the same thing. It has changed the way we communicate, and it evolves each and every day. Every year it's a new edition. Twitter, 2006, wasn't even on the radar 5 or 6 years ago for most people. Now, media, public officials, they don't communicate without it. The President of the United States prefers to talk to people of this country, whether good or bad, through that venue more than anything else. Changed the game over just the last couple of years. Netflix, the streaming devices, how many of you watch shows differently today on your phone, later in the evening, when you get home after you put the kids to bed because of that? Game changer. Instagram, sharing of pictures, all those things. The game changes, and it changes fast in technology. So technology is cool. It allows you to do your business differently. What has been a little dated is how government has used it. Instead of going to an office around the state, grab a number, sit down, wait in line, we'll see you in 2 hours, take 3 hours off of work to go get this registration, this certificate, technology hasn't quite caught up to that. The rest of our life, you don't wait in line for a movie ticket anymore, but for some reason you do for a government service a lot of times. Technology hasn't caught up. 2008, LaTrack was a game changer. It was awesome. But from 2008 to 2018, in technology years, that 10 years is 100 years. Think about what else you were doing in 2008. How many of you were listening to CDs and watching DVDs, and we were streaming all that stuff right now? The game changes. Look, the See Here guy's with me. Look, yeah, the technology guy's with me. So anyway, we always have to be willing to learn on that. And the person that we have here, when you look in the world of national transparency, from a government perspective, and how technology can make that more user-friendly, not just dump a document into cyberspace, but make it user-friendly, checkbook.com is the cutting edge. It is the Instagram of this space. It is the Twitter of this space. It is the Facebook of this space. And it's constantly reinventing itself. Right now, when you go on LaTrack, which is a very cool site, but it doesn't show you anything about local government spending. It doesn't show you judicial. Doesn't show you legislative. Boards and commissions are off the grid. Only 1 or 2 universities are on there. There's a host of other universities not on there. Again, a good site, but it's 10 years old. So in our mind, as we looked at this, there's no better issue that should be a bipartisan effort that can cut through all of this partisan finger-pointing and blame game that we see today. Then let's embrace technology to be more transparent, not just in a way to comply with a law, but so that citizens across this state can, for the first time, feel like they really know what's going on. You know, Treasurer SCHRODER mentioned something. One of the biggest issues we have is trust in government. How do you rebuild trust? First thing it starts is being truthful and putting information out there. And so we're excited to work with a coalition of business groups and state groups and private sector groups and think tanks and chambers across the state that has joined a coalition to try to bring OhioCheckbook.com here to become LouisianaCheckbook.com. We think it's a great bipartisan opportunity that taxpayers will love. And so when we started thinking about that, what's the best way to learn how to do it? Well, let's go right to the horse's mouth. Let's go to the innovators themselves. And so we called the Ohio Treasurer's Office and said, can you send us someone down? And they said, we'll send our best guy.
You know, why did we do this in Ohio? It wasn't just for the PERG ranking. We were 46th in the nation. So let me tell you a little story and kind of set the landscape. Pew Public Polling, most of you have probably heard of it, started asking a question in 1958. Do you believe or do you trust your government to always do the right thing? Think about that. 1958, kind of post-World War II, coffee was 5 cents, drive-in movie theaters were all the rage. All-time high, 74% of the respondents said they trusted their government to do the right thing. You fast forward to today when we're paying $5 for a cup of coffee, we're streaming movies on our iPhones. Same question when asked to the populace, 19% and probably continuing to drop. So a large decline in the trust in government. Now, in the same time frame, we went from the space age to the information technology age. The way we access information is greatly improved. Everyone here has a smartphone, I would hope. They also asked the question, have you gone online to look for government financial documents? Pretty specific. 65% of folks in 2015 responded yes. And that is going to continue to climb. So you've got your declining trust and your role of technology. There's a large gap there. And it's defined by a question of, do you believe your government effectively communicates? Because governments communicate, right? I mean, we put out documents, we stream council meetings, and we try to do the right thing, but is it effective? 93% of the respondents said no. They don't believe governments effectively communicate. So that was the kind of the realm that we live in, right? The reality of how to make governments effectively communicate. And when you're dealing with hundreds of billions of dollars in state spending, which if we can get the checkbook site up on the screen, there we go. It's a lot of information to try to decipher. And so Treasurer Mandel was elected in 2010. He started his term in 2011. And we started leveraging technology to try to not only improve efficiencies within the office, but to build trust, right? Get trust back into government by effectively communicating. And so One of the things that caught our eye was the PERG ranking. We're 46th in the nation. We took a kind of look around Ohio of who was championing transparency. No one had really taken charge, and so Josh said, well, the heck with it, we're doing it. We looked at what other states were doing at the time, the 2013 and 14 rankings. Actually, our neighbor to the west, Indiana, was one of the top ranked states, and there was this trend of putting your checkbooks online, able to track how your money's being spent. And Stephen said it very well too. It's not just data dumps anymore. We're not just putting out large files of raw data. It's how to make a website that's searchable, interactive, user-friendly, and intuitive. So we started developing the Ohio Checkbook. We knew we wanted those three core principles. I call it the three-legged stool, but it's searchable. So how do people search these days? It's Yahoo, it's Google, it's Bing, it's search engines. So we needed that same functionality on over $600 billion worth of spending, over 160 million individual transactions. If you think about that in an Excel file, it's crazy. You can't, it'd be hard to even run any type of macros or reports on it. So Google style search bar, number one. Number two, dynamic charting, interactive graphs. Indiana had a couple pie graphs on. Great, it shows percentages of agencies and budgets and spending, but really wanted a way that when you click into a graph, you're actually clicking into the data. It's following the information, and as my chief of staff in the back is clicking around, he's just kind of showing you some of the different features. And I could spend hours on this. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're going to keep it a little high level. We are here all afternoon, so if you want some more information, come find us. But it took about 18 months to build, really from scratch. I mean, we pulled in the data. We were trying to figure out what data points we wanted. We were able to accurately pull in about 35 pieces. And then we launched this. So December of 2014, we launched OhioCheckbook.com. Didn't really know how it was going to go, but all of a sudden we just started really receiving positive feedback. First quarter of 2015, PERG put out their next rankings. We went from 46th in the nation to first. We're the first state to score 100 points, a perfect score, in PERG scorecard. So what we had built was validated as the nation's leading transparency tool. So let me show you how it works real fast. Kevin, if you want to put in the Google search bar, start typing out transportation. So it does a text query. So it's running, it's going to bring up kind of that predictive search, right? So even if you don't know what you're looking for, you start typing it in, it's going to show you. It's going to show you the different funds, expense categories. It tracks our chart of accounts. We have appropriation line items, so we're able to track how that money is being coded in the state legislature, exactly how they're accounting for it, programs, and then all the way down to vendors. These are vendor level payments, and that's another kind of differentiator. So click Department of Transportation, Kevin. So this is going to, let me make sure we can get, so this is showing just over $3.3 billion. Once you click into transportation, it breaks it down into the expense categories. So these are your large categories. You can see equipment, debt service. Kevin, if you want to hit equipment. We have subcategories or sub-objects of equipment. So again, it's intuitive. It already breaks that down for you. It follows the money. So here we have $61 million looking at equipment. Let's go ahead and do office equipment. So for fiscal year 17, there was only 4 transactions in Department of Transportation for $2,700. Once you drill down far enough, you actually get to the check ledger. So these are the individual payments. You can click on one, and it brings up a representation that we chose to put into a personal banking check image. Citizens can relate to personal banking much more easily than multi-fund accounting or large Excel graphs. So this image right here contains those 35 pieces of information. So the specific check number. Investigative journalists or just journalists in general love this because Before in Ohio, if you wanted to look at office equipment spending across multiple agencies and departments, that would take an individual public records request for each agency and department, and then weeks to months to get that back. Now they have a specific check number, a date. So if they have any more information on this piece of spending, we put a contact for transportation, and then if right under the memo line for office equipment is a neat feature. So this is the breadcrumbs. This is essentially the accounting structure for this piece of spending. So you're able to track it through essentially, its accounting process. And then right underneath where the money is coming from, this is where the state legislature, this is the information that tracks it, what fund, the appropriation line item, what program. So really neat feature to see. My boss, Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel, really believes that the Ohio taxpayers have a right to know how their tax money is being spent. And so we developed the OhioCheckbook.com program so that every Ohio citizen can now have online access to every penny that the state spends. So everything from a $2 pack of pencils to multi-million-dollar road construction projects is all online. It's easy. It's got a Google-style search bar, so you can look for specific vendors, specific spending categories, all the way through interactive, easy-to-use charting. And so it's a really useful tool for Ohio taxpayers.
What kind of response have you had so far?
An overwhelmingly positive response. Right away, we went from 46th in the nation in transparency based on the U.S. PIRG Follow Your Money report to first in the nation. So what we built was validated as the nation's leading transparency tool. And then just within Ohio, a large coalition of support from the Ohio News Association to local governments really got behind it, and it's been very, very positive.
There was one example I'll give. I was playing around with it the other day, and I went to this little village, township, whatever it was, in one local area there, and within a couple of clicks found the amount of the check that little village wrote the preceding month for the pool supply chemicals for their little public pool. Now, you're right thinking, who cares what they're, but think about if in whatever city you came from today, if you could go and check out how much did they write the contract for last week for that service, that bus service, that vendor payment, whatever, and what's the trend lines on that? I mean, I think that's powerful. I think it's unbelievable. So anyway, thank you so much for coming down and sharing that. So, okay, I asked you earlier to take your phones out. I don't know if you were paying attention or not, but I hope you still have them because we're going to try a little interactive PC, or we're going to try to be tech savvy to the best of our ability. Okay, so I'm going to read the script so I don't mess this up. Okay, take out your phones, take out your text function. Pull out your text function. In that text function, instead of texting to a phone number you're familiar with, text 5 to 52886, and in the subject part, put checkbook. So you're texting to the number 52886, and in the little part where you say, honey, I'll be home late tonight, put checkbook. Put checkbook. I'm going to give you a second to do that. If you do that, take a look on the screen behind me for directions. You should be getting a link back at some point that you can click on to take action. If you get that link back and you think this is a cool idea that you'd like to see happen, click on that link. Now what that link should do, if it works, is just to give you an ability to send a message to your legislator by filling out a little small form saying, hey, I like checkbook.com, I think you should work to get it done. Now as you do that, if you all do that, and if the technology works of course, it should start popping up little flags on who's sending it from where. So if you're from Monroe and you sent that, boom, we should see a flag up and from Monroe. No pressure, Terry Ball, but I'm watching you. But I see someone on the, someone just popped in from the 1012 corridor. Someone's in Baton Rouge. So this will kind of show around the state who's sending it into where. So it's a cool little premise. It goes to show you that, look, doesn't matter where you're from in the state, no matter what your political persuasion is, this is something that we need to look into doing here in Louisiana. It's exactly the type of transparency we need.
The thing I think best defines Tim is in 2016 when the floods hit Louisiana, one of the first calls I got was from a guy named Tim Stein. And Tim was calling basically saying, listen, we've got a store in Livingston. We need to get our people housing so that we can get them back to work, because we've got people that need our materials. They need lumber, they need cleaning out materials, they need gloves, they need tools, and we can't open without our employees being in the region because our employees were displaced to other areas. His first idea was to come in, get the rooms for his employees so they can get back and service that community. And if you think back to that moment, Stein Lumber was one of the first stores to go in that region and provide the supplies that community needed to get back and up and running. And so I think that says a lot about how Tim is. He saw a crisis and said, how can we help? And what can we do to get back going quickly? And that says a lot about the Tim Stein that I know. So Tim, congrats or condolences on being elected the 2018 LABI chair. And take it away.
Well, thank you for those warm words. How y'all doing? Welcome again, everyone, and thank you for joining today for this important event. On behalf of LABI and the Board of Directors, we are truly appreciative of those who have supported our missions over these last 43 years. It's been a pleasure to be involved with LABI, and in particular to work so closely with such energetic and knowledgeable board members from around the state. LABI is led by an outstanding 100 board member of directors who establish our policy positions and provide strong stewardship for the organization. They are the true community leaders who value the principles of a free enterprise and want to see Louisiana prosper. They help champion LABI's mission statewide, and we are incredibly appreciative of their hard work, energy, and commitment. At this time, I would like to ask all members of the LABI Board, 2018 LABI Board of Directors, to stand and be recognized. It's the fact that they push for free enterprise and a better Louisiana. I mean, not just one corner of Louisiana and not just one size business. We're talking all corners of Louisiana and all sizes of business, from small to the very large. We're for free enterprise, we're for open economy, and and nothing better than a good free Louisiana, but especially inviting for business.
Our corporation has been a member of LABI for many, many years, and we see LABI as an organization that's statewide, carries a lot of clout with it. It has the support of very diverse industry representation, from heavy industry to very small businesses, mom and pop operations, and they do just an outstanding job of representing all of us at the state legislature and pushing for better government, good government, lower taxes, and the things that are really important to business and allow us to be competitive, not just here in Louisiana, but nationally and internationally.
LABI is a great service to business members. We offer a lot of services to make it easier for folks to compete in the market. Obviously, we talk a lot about the policies in the Capitol and in D.C., and that's a very important piece. But there's other things we do as well. We have issue councils where if you're a member, you can join in and you can weigh in on what our position should be and what are the next types of laws we should be pushing for. So we want our business owners to tell us, what do you need to succeed? That's what we want to go deliver on. The other piece is we have a benefits center, and so we offer competitive insurance rates and HR issues. We have ACA compliance programs. We offer LifeLock so they can protect their security. We want to put services out in the market so that a small business especially, but all businesses, can not worry about all the other stuff. They can just focus on their jobs and their customers. That's what we want them to do. Let us take care of the rest.
I think we've been involved about 12 years, maybe a year or two longer. The value is that they focus on general business issues. We're a construction contractor, but first and foremost, we're a business that operates in Louisiana, and so it's absolutely important to us. We're a smaller business. We can't afford to have our own staff of analysts or lobbyists, and so LABI brings a great value to the table in the general business area.
I have, and our company has been a member company for 40 plus years now with LABI, and through those years, I have seen that LABI has stood for, sometimes against strong opposition, for things that I believe help our state succeed. LABI is into creating jobs, and we do that in a variety of ways. Education reform, the way we attract companies into the state is by trying to offer good education for the people who may be moving into the state. LABI is always promoting legislation that would be encouraging companies to locate here and expand the jobs opportunities here. When we have more jobs, more people working, more people making money, obviously the state economy is going to improve. And LABI's always been active in judicial reform and tort reform, and that's important to the companies of our state and to me personally.
Our company has been a member for many, many years, and the reason that we belong to LABI, an organization that represents not just the 4,000 AT&T employees across the state, but also the almost 350,000 employees by LABI members, is that it's a voice for business. It's one voice. We have multitudes and thousands of businesses, small to large, across the state, creating jobs for Louisiana, creating a vibrant economy for Louisiana, and LABI is able to represent all of our businesses with one voice at the governor's office, at the legislative level, and as well as at the local level as needed.
What's so important here in Louisiana is really asking this question: how do we bring jobs and opportunity back to the state? And until we can do that, these debates over which tax and what tax and where do we cut, ultimately that's asking the wrong question. So how do we bring jobs and opportunity back, and how do we raise the economy of the state of Louisiana?
We're members of LABI because we believe in growing Louisiana economy. Growing the Louisiana economy means growing businesses. LABI has been there on the forefront, improving the business climate of Louisiana for years, and we believe in the mission of LABI, and that's why we are members.
We've been members probably 15 to 20 years, and I think this is probably the quintessential business lobbying organization in the state of Louisiana. I think you have to be a member. If you're not a member, I think you do yourself a disservice.
Well, LABI has been a great partner, not just for ExxonMobil, but for industry across the state. And as ExxonMobil has really a time of opportunity to invest more in our facilities all across the Gulf Coast, LABI has been a very important partner to make sure that we are competitive and are improving our workforce, improving our infrastructure, and improving our business environment. All those are very important for us when we make decisions about investment.
LABI has just been a tremendous advocate for business in Louisiana. It not only works on policies that promote free enterprise and a fair playing field, but it really helps foster conditions for job growth and capital formation, which raises the sights of young people in Louisiana.
It gives one the opportunity to express your voice, share your concerns, and be able to help all of us in business to be able to collaborate with one another, which in turn helps all of the citizens of the state.
In my way of looking at it, the real solution to the state's fiscal challenges is to grow the economy and to create jobs. So having a business group and businesses in general talk to us as legislators about the importance of the legislation that we're considering and how it could affect businesses and jobs in our state is critical.
The family's been involved in the land business for a couple hundred years. But, I pride myself as being a sugarcane farmer. LABI brings common sense to the whole process through insurance and all the rest of it, making it easier to do business in the state of Louisiana. I appreciate their efforts of making common sense of the whole business environment in the state of Louisiana.
Well, it's extremely important. We have everything from regulations to taxes that directly involve businesses, have a direct hit on them, can help or hurt either way. And so obviously, and even when it comes to things like education, infrastructure, there's so many things that affect businesses and the growth of the economy and the legislature. And we're very happy that we have organizations because there's so many small businesses across Louisiana that not all of them can come to the Capitol all the time. So we're really happy that we have organizations that can represent them as a whole.
I tell people this all the time. Legislators don't know
everything. They know a little bit of something about a lot of different things. So it's important to have organizations like LABI who's representing the business community to pass on information back and forth and communicate with the legislature and the state leaders to what's going on in business. I think is very important.
It is critical. You know, we have so many elected officials that don't have a business background, and their actions can greatly affect business in Louisiana. So it's important to have an organization like this to work with the legislators to make them understand changing rules, regulations, taxes, how it can negatively impact our businesses. And there's so many small businesses in Louisiana. And by the way, tourism is big business in Louisiana. So all the people in the tourism industry, they're in business as well. So we have a vested interest in supporting this great organization to make sure the business climate improves in Louisiana. We've got a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of great people here today that believe in Louisiana, and working together, I think we can make some headway.
I've been a member for at least 20 years now, and the value is just priceless. LABI has given me an opportunity to share my voice within state government.
A business really needs to be involved in the political process because legislators, yes, they're concerned about what the subject matter experts that are lobbying them and talking to them, what they have to say because they are the experts, but they're just as concerned about what their constituents have to say. They're concerned about what impacts their constituents, and because they don't know your business, it's important for you to be able to talk to them and tell them how what they're doing is going to impact you.
Businesses should join LABI because it is the strongest operating and legislative arm that can represent business in the state legislature and all of the departments within the state government. I just think that they have the voice of a business behind them, and when they speak, the legislature listens.
Oh, it's been a great turnout today. We're really excited about it. We're expecting about 1,100 people here. It's one of our largest events ever. A lot of diverse businesses from across the state. And you know, it's great to see these folks walking around, working with each other, making connections, learning from each other. That's one piece. The other piece is this is our annual opportunity to celebrate businesses in this state. Far too often when you read about business in Louisiana, they're being blamed for something or accused for something or trying to be targeted for a tax or a regulation. This is one time we can take a time out and say, you know what, thank you. Because every community has employers that are hiring people, they're investing people, they're donating to the local school, they're donating to the local charities. When things like floods or storms or other issues hit, the businesses are the first people to step up and go and provide that service to help that community rebuild. They do a great service each and every day, and it doesn't get highlighted enough. So this annual meeting is a perfect opportunity where we want to say thank you and try to recognize some of those services.
If people have questions like more information about LABI, what should they do?
You know, go to our website, easiest way to do it, www.labi.org. All the information you could possibly want sitting there. Call our offices if you want. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We've got all the social media channels. So check us out, learn some from us, but let us learn from you more importantly. We'd love to hear from our members and we love your input.